What's going on, everybody? You got Tone here, back with another video. This time though, not a draft league video whatsoever, with Pokemon Presents releasing news about the upcoming Pokemon Scarlet and Violet DLC, the Teal Mask and the Indigo Disc. We got some new information and some brand new Pokemon to talk about. I would have done this a lot earlier, but I had a lot of things to do, and hopefully I put together some information that we've already seen in other websites that's already been released. I also have my own thing going where I actually put together my own personal stat distributions for all the new Pokemon that were revealed during the Pokemon Presents earlier in the day. So with that all out of the way, let's just jump right into it, because this is going to be hopefully not a long one, but yeah, there's a lot of talk about. So there's 4 Pokemon to talk about with the release of this new information. The first one you have on your screen here in the new evolution for Duraludon, Archaludon. The evolution we didn't expect, but the one we will never say no to. Just ask King Gambit. In any case though, Archaludon has a fantastic design first and foremost, especially considering it looks exactly like a drawbridge. And for the most part, Duraludon getting an evolution was something I never would have expected to happen, especially considering it was already a decent Pokemon as it is, maybe not as an upper echelon Pokemon, but this thing blew me away, and it looks so freaking cool, especially considering Steel Dragon is already a great typing as it is defensively and offensively. And then take into account you further increase that. Like, we already got Hisuian Gudra from Legends of Arceus, and now this completely out of left field. But I am not going to say no. This thing is fantastic. Not to mention with all the information we've already gotten, with 2 abilities that's been released, saying its ability is going to be either Stamina or Sturdy. Stamina on a Pokemon like this is nuts, especially considering Duraludon already gets access to Iron Defense and Body Press. So giving it an evolution on top of Stamina, Iron Defense, Body Press is going to go crazy. This thing can get to +6 defense in 2 turns and just go ham with Body Press. This, in conjunction with Terastallization, this terastallizing into a fighting type to boost the power of Body Press, insane. Not to mention Steel Dragon, it only has 2 weaknesses, fighting and ground. And with it being able to terastallize in something like a flying type, there goes its 2 weaknesses right there. On top of that, it does get a signature move called Electro Shot, which is a 2-turn electric special type move that raises the special attack of Archaludon's special attack on turn 1, and then it fires it on the 2nd turn. However, if rain is up, it fires right away. So it's essentially taking the concept of Solar Beam and Meteor Beam, combining it into one move, and having the instance of having a special move like this on this Pokemon is insane. What the other thing I love about this this signature move on Archaludon is the fact that its typing doesn't even match the signature move typing, which is irrelevant because of terastallization. But I love the concept of giving these types of Pokemon signature moves that you just don't think about. It doesn't really make sense on the surface, but considering the design, I'm not going to say no to that. And a Solar Beam, Meteor Beam in 1, totally out of left field again, but I still love the concept of Archaludon. I love the design. I love pretty much everything I've seen from the trailer has been absolutely insane. Even down to the pictures and everything, the fact that it can arch his body and become like a drawbridge for more mobility purposes and still have the sturdiness. It's just ridiculous. It just looks so freaking cool. This was a definite win in my book for Archaludon. So with that out of the way though, let me just jump right into my own personal stat distribution for Archaludon. So here we have Duraludon and Archaludon next side by side. Our Duraludon stats, as you see on your screen here, with 70 defense, 70 HP, 95 attack, 115 defense, 120 special defense, 50 base special defense, and 85 speed, for a base stat total of 535. when I personally tried to put a stat distribution together for Archaludon, two Pokemon came to mind when doing this. The first one being Bisharp evolving into King Gambit, and the second one, Mudbray into Mudsdale. Both of those Pokemon's evolutions basically traded speed for more power and bulk, and I feel like in this instance, Archaludon will be doing the exact same thing. So getting into my full stat distribution for Archaludon, as you see right now, this is what I pretty much came up with for Archaludon. So it gains bulk, it gains 35 base HP to 105, no change in its attack stat, it stays at 95, a slight increase in defense to 130, a slight increase to special attack also makes it 130, a boost to its special defense to make it base 70, and a decrease in speed to base 65. The one thing also I wanted to take into account when it came to making this stat distribution, I wanted to keep it true to what the Duraludon stats already were. As you can see, the Duraludon stats are very linear. They either end in a 0 or a 5. And three stats end in a 0, 3 stats end in a 5. With Archaludon, I wanted to keep the exact same thing going whilst making sure it has the increase in power and bulk at the sacrifice of some speed. Will Game Freak actually do something like this? It's possible, but then again, when you consider something like Tinkaton with that big hammer and its base 94 speed, who knows? It might not change at all. But regardless, this is my own personal idea of what Archaludon's stats could look like. It's very bulky, and like I said before, Steel Dragon is still a fantastic typing, and making this thing even bulkier on top of that, it's just so ridiculously good. It's like, you didn't expect this, but at the same time, like, who's going to say no to another Steel Dragon type? Like, aside from Asui and Goodra, now we have this. So it's like, the love for Steel Dragon types are showing out big time this generation, and I'm so for it. That is for damn sure. So that is Archaludon for me, my own personal stat distribution and all that stuff. But yeah, wish I could talk about it longer before I move on, but there are 3 other Pokemon that I want to get into. So we get into the second Pokemon that was shown here, and that is Dipplin, the new evolution for Applin. Another Pokemon I wasn't expecting, but considering all the ways apples can be made into something sort of food-like, I mean, you could say it was kind of expected, but at the same time, though, it didn't really make sense in my mind. But hey, it's Dipplin's here. It's a candied apple. We already have an apple pie. We already have flapple wings and all that stuff. So yeah, this was another left field Pokemon, but again, the design, I like it. The candy apple vibe and all that stuff. It's technically 2 applins in one, sharing one apple, not one worm. It's 2 in there. But in any case, about the Pokemon itself, it's still Grass Dragon type. It has an ability with Gluttony and a new ability called Super Sweet Syrup, which basically says when this Pokemon enters the field, it lowers the evasiveness of all opposing Pokemon by 1 stage. So essentially defog in an ability, to put it in retrospect. But yeah, basically wouldn't see much application from a singles format. Could work in doubles to make sort of some status moves have a higher chance of hitting. But even so, in singles format, something like Draco Meteor can guarantee hit now without having the 10% chance of missing. And then you have on top of it its signature move, Syrup Bomb, which is essentially a grass type special move where it lowers the full speed by 1 every turn for 3 turns, which is fantastic for speed control purposes. I don't know if it's a single target attack or a multi-hit move. I don't think it is. But from a doubles perspective, where speed control is so pivotal to in certain turns where the tide of the battle can shift one way or another depending on who has the speed advantage, can be great for like negating stuff like Tailwind Boost or whatever from a doubles perspective, but it's detrimental if you're going up against Trick Room, where you could even hit your own teammate with this move to drop their speed in order to counteract Trick Room if you want to go that far. But still, the application is pretty cool, having that means of lowering speed and having speed control in general. Absolutely fantastic on a Pokemon like this, but it more so just comes down to stat distribution and how well this thing might do in a competitive format. So with that out of the way, let's jump right into my own stat distribution for Dipplin. So here we have Dipplin in comparison to its other two Apple brethren, Flapple and Appleton. Some things to note here: their base stat totals are both 485. And on top of that, they also have a very similar concept of their stats being the base defense stat being base 80. So with that, I have that same thing going for Dipplin as well. Other thing to note is the fact that all their Flapple and Appleton stats all end with a 0 except for one stat which ends in a 5. So 95 special attack for Flapple, 85 special attack for Appleton. So for Dipplin specifically, as you see the stat distribution I came up with for this thing, here you go. This is my own personal stat distribution for Dipplin. I figured with its signature move being a special attack and Syrup Bomb, I wanted to give it the most damage output possible, which is why it's at base 110 special attack. The other thing to note about this is no stat on Flapple or Appleton is higher than 110. So to keep that lore going, I decided to not exceed base 110 on any of its stats. So I put it in special attack to give it the most damage output from Syrup Bomb and Draco Meteor, making it a full-fledged special attacker. Base defense is 80 because it's the same across the entire evolution line, even going back to Applin. And as for the rest of the stat distribution, I sort of did a mid-ground between Flapple and Appleton stats. So 70 HP for Flapple, 110 for Appleton. I did a slice down the middle, and we have 90 for Dipplin. Special defense, the same thing. Midpoint between 60 and 80 is 70. So there's that. The speed and the attack, originally it was going to be an inverse sort of thing, so it could have had like 50 speed and like 95 attack, but I didn't really see the meaning of having Dipplin have a move like Syrup Bomb and not be like have a speed stat that was at least decent enough to take advantage of trying to outspeed something after at least one turn of it going into effect. So I instead decided to make a little bit of an adjustment, give Dipplin 75 speed. It's faster than Flapple at the very least, so it has that going for it for the most part, and then 60 in attack, because I don't really see this thing being a physical attacker in any sense. So yeah, 75 felt like a respectable speed stat. It also keeps the lore of having every stat have a 0 except for one with ends in a 5. So 75 felt like a good little mid-ground number for a speed for Dipplin for the most part. And honestly, the stats are pretty okay and kind of average and balanced out pretty well for the most part. I mean, Game Freak could do whatever the heck it wants at this point. It could be 55 speed or something like that and not take advantage of Syrup Bomb whatsoever. But I felt like this was a bit more better of representation for Dipplin overall in terms of being a hard-hitting special attacker with okay speed, which is mitigated with the speed mitigated by Syrup Bomb lowering the opponent's speed. So who would say no to that? So with that is my Dipplin stat distribution, and now we move on to the other two Pokemon that was announced. Those two Pokemon being the two new Paradox Pokemon, Raging Bolt and Iron Crown. I absolutely was I was stunned by one and blown away by the other. The first time I saw Raging Bolt, I had to rewind the presentation. I was like, what the hell is this Raikou? What happened to Raikou's neck? And then when I looked at it again, and then it made sense considering it has the dinosaur vibe now. For a moment, I actually thought they fused it with an Ouroboros, but it turns out it has more of a Brachiosaurus sort of lore going here to go with the dragon combination here for a past Paradox Pokemon. And then Iron Crown, the Paradox form of Cobalion. I absolutely love this design. I love that they kept the teal coloring of Cobalion and made it more pronounced, and then it still has the gold going from the original Cobalion as well. It just looks so, it looks absolutely beautiful, futuristic and all that stuff, and it really stands out, and it has a face that lets you know it's playing no games whatsoever with this thing. So yeah, and then you have my speculative typing, just going by how Walking Wake became Water Dragon. I gave the speculative typing of Electric Dragon for Raging Bolt, and of course with being a past Paradox Pokemon, it has the ability Photosynthesis. With Iron Crown, pretty much the same thing, going with Iron Leaves becoming Grass Psychic. I figured might as well make the Iron Crown Steel Psychic to keep that lore going. And it's, of course, since the future Paradox Pokemon, its ability is Quark Drive. With that out of the way, I will jump into the my own stat distributions for Raging Bolt. So with that, here is the stat comparison between the Suicune and Walking Wake, and then we also have Raikou stats to compare with Raging Bolt. So the one thing to take into account between Suicune, Raikou, and even Entei, and I feel like Entei will eventually get a Paradox form as well, as well as Terrakion with a future Paradox form, but the thing to take into account in terms of Suicune and Raikou stat distribution, they all have, as well as Entei for the most part, all three of those Pokemon have similar stat distributions and a base stat total of 580. The thing to take into account here is the stats. All three Pokemon have two stats base 115, one stat that's base 100, one stat base 90, one stat base 85, and one stat that's 75. In looking at the comparison between Suicune and Walking Wake and how its distribution went, because it's past Paradox Pokemon, I had to keep the lore going with past Paradox Pokemon stats always being an odd number, and also it ended up being 590. I did the exact same thing here for Raging Bolt as well in conjunction with Raikou stats. For example, Suicune base 100 HP, Walking Wake became 99, 75 attack with Suicune became 83, the two 115 stats became 91, 83 respectively, where it can basically go either way in terms of which stat you want to be the highest. But the other thing to take into account between Suicune, Raikou, and Entei, not only are all the numbers the same, no two Pokemon have the exact same stat distribution in the same area. So keeping that lore going with Raging Bolt, I had to follow the rule that was pretty much given to me just based on what the distribution already has here going. So to start things off here, I did the simple one. So with Raikou having base 90 HP, looking at Suicune has 90 base special attack, it became 125 for Walking Wake. Raikou has base 90 HP, so Raging Bolt I gave 125 base HP. And just looking at the design of Raging Bolt as well, it looks pretty sturdy enough to the point where 125 HP is pretty plausible in this sense of the imagination. Moving on, we also have the 115 stats coming 91 and 83 for Walking Wake. Here, I decided to give Raging Bolt 91 special attack and 83 speed. Just because of the fact that Raging Bolt, I feel like because it's so burly and big, I feel like it would be more of a slower Pokemon as opposed to it being fast, which is different from being an electric type Pokemon. So I did give it higher special attack than speed as opposed to doing the other way around. So that explains why we have 91 special attack and 83 speed. Then we have 99 special defense because Suicune's base 100 stat became 99 for Walking Wake, so Raikou's 100 stat became 99 here for Raging Bolt. Then we have 109 attack for Raging Bolt for 85 for Raikou became 109 for Raging Bolt. Same thing with 85 speed for Suicune became 109 for Walking Wake. And then finally 75 attack for Suicune became 83 for Walking Wake. So the same thing applies here. 83 defense for Raging Bolt, and we have a base stat total of 590. Overall, it's a pretty bulky Pokemon. Nothing really stands out other than the fact that it's a bulky electric type, or electric dragon as I've speculated to be, but for the most part nothing really stands out for the most part. The other thing that has not been noted in terms of Raging Bolt is the fact that there's no signature move that was announced yet, as opposed to what Walking Wake already had in Hydro Steam. For my speculation for Raging Bolt, the one thing that I feel like that would really make this thing shine to make up for its like middling stats is either having an electric move, like an electric base attack that allows you to hit ground types, or at the very least have a dragon move that allows you to hit fairies. Those types of things haven't come to fruition yet. That hasn't happened, but it is nice to have that sort of theory, especially considering that electric types can struggle with ground, especially if they lack the coverage. Same thing with dragons struggling with fairies because of the immunity. Why not have a move like that on a Pokemon like Raging Bolt and make it exclusive? It will make it stand out a whole lot more and give it a lot more viability to be used in higher tiers from a Smogon perspective. But from a competitive standpoint, you can do whatever you want. But I feel like something like a move like that would be a lot more beneficial for Raging Bolt as well. Or at the very least, if I doubt they're going to do that anyway, the other third option that came to my mind was having sort of like a rising voltage sort of move for Raging Bolt. But basically like an electric move that gets boosted in the sun or does more damage while the sun is up. Or even more so, having an electric move that while the sun is out doubles as a fire move. So yeah, dual typing attacks. They've done that before. Flying Press literally existed on Holucha. So having something that can coexist as two typing simultaneously but checking electric first. So obviously if it hits a ground type Pokemon, it won't work because it's electric first, then it goes to fire. But regardless, that's just me rambling on about signature moves and whatnot. Let's move on to Iron Crown. The similar thing we have here in regards to Cobalion stats, as well as Virizion and Iron Leaves, and how their stats were distributed. Same thing here. Future Paradox Pokemon stats are always even. So with that being said, Virizion, the nice thing about these stats, they're a lot more linear between Virizion, Cobalion, and even Terrakion. The two main concepts that hold true to all three of the Swords of Justice is the fact that they all have the same base HP stat and they all have the same base speed stat at 91 and 108 respectively. So with that being said, you can kind of see where this is going to go in terms of stats that I came up with for Iron Crown. So to start things off simple, they already have 90. Since Iron Leaves stats became 90 and 104 in retrospect to the HP and speed stat for Virizion, I did the exact same thing here for Iron Crown in regards to Cobalion. Next up, we have 108 defense. Virizion's 129 special defense became 108 for Iron Leaves, so 129 defense for Cobalion became 108 for Iron Crown. It just makes the most sense just to try to keep with the rule here that was provided. Then we have 88 special defense for Iron Crown to coincide with Cobalion's lowest base stat of 72. So 72 defense for Virizion became 88 defense for Iron Leaves. So 72 special defense for Cobalion became 88 for Iron Crown. Now for the odd one here. Virizion and Cobalion both have 90 attack and special attack. And coinciding it to Iron Leaves, Virizion's 90 attack became 130 and special attack dropped to 70. While it may be easy to just put 130 attack on Iron Crown and 70 special attack on it as well, the one thing that the Swords of Justice did not have in common were stats. They had the same numbers, but they were never in the same slot, aside from attack and defense here for Virizion and Cobalion. So giving Iron Crown 130 attack doesn't make sense here if I want to keep up with the lore, so instead we gave it 70 attack and 130 special attack, making it into a pretty formidable Pokemon from a bulk standpoint, especially considering if Iron Crown keeps the same moves that Cobalion did, stuff like Calm Mind, even going out of the way, maybe it gets Nasty Plot. I don't know. I doubt it. I don't think any future Paradox Pokemon gets Nasty Plot for the most part. So it might just be stuck doing a Calm Mind sort of thing. But regardless, though, this feels a lot more better in terms of stat distribution for Iron Crown. It gives something that stands out, as opposed to being just a physical attacker like Iron Leaves. This is a lot more formidable. It feels a lot more, well, not restrictive, but it feels a lot more of a thing that might be Iron Crown's calling card for the most part, especially when you consider that it gives it something different from its other Steel Psychic type that's coming back later in the DLC, being Metagross. Having something different to that thing is definitely going to be more beneficial in the long run, especially when you consider Metagross is already a better physical attacker with stuff like Meteor Mash, Earthquake. Who knows if it keeps Rock Polish, it gets Bullet Punch for priority and all that stuff. Iron Crown at the very least has a sort of similar thing, but from a special perspective, and that's pretty much what I was going with here in terms of Iron Crown, and of course it fits the lore pretty doggone well in terms of stat distribution. Other than that, though, this is a pretty good, this is my own personal stat distribution for Iron Crown. The only thing we don't have really is the signature move for Iron Crown. I know Iron Leaves gets Psyblade, which is essentially just a psychic move that does more damage to the opponent if Electric Terrain is up. I can imagine Iron Crown getting something similar to that from Electric Terrain perspective, but I don't know in what sense. I'm assuming it's just going to be like a special version of Psyblade, as opposed to keeping Psyblade across all three Pokemon. And even more so, the potential for Paradox Terrakion is well beyond my knowledge. But we'll leave that for another episode. I do have stats for that too, but I don't want to delve into something that's not fully confirmed yet, and I don't want to risk getting in trouble by anyone with my own weird speculations. But yeah, that's going to be the video here. I hope you guys enjoyed my thought process behind all these stats. I apologize if it seems like a bit rushed, but I did put time and effort into like doing the best in terms of what I felt was the most adequate stat distribution for these Pokemon, and tried to make it competitive but not like too overly broken. It just felt more, it felt a lot different, and it was a lot of fun putting this stuff together for the most part. Like, I was even coming up with sets for all of these stats. Like, I had like 2 sets going for Archaludon with like Iron Defense Body Press nonsense, specs with Iron Defense with Terra Flying, and specs with like Terra Dragon or Flying or Steel, whatever. So yeah, I had a lot of ideas, but hopefully this sort of presentation, hopefully this gave you an idea into what I thought in terms of the new Pokemon. I do like them. They definitely give a breath of fresh air. And on top of that, there's also the DLC coming out next month, September 13th. So it's going to be a brand new metagame anyway, especially with these new Pokemon coming into the fray. And some returning ones as well. So with that being said, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, leave a like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. Let me know your thoughts on the new Pokemon that were released in for the Teal Mask and the Indigo Disc. And yeah, that's going to be it from me, guys. Hopefully I will be doing another video like this in terms of any other future news that may pop up. But yeah, until then, thanks you guys so much for watching again, and until the next time, Mrs. Tone, signing off for now. Peace out.